Let us start. So, Namaskar everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to bring you this particular session, 23rd in series of Vashni Teachers Group and Global Learners Academy, through which we are interacting with eminent speakers who are expert in their respective domain. Of course, our range of topic has been very wide. We have been talking to person on the ground and also person we have had talks regarding the sun and solar system and whatnot. So what we normally say A to G, we are trying to cover, and each time we bring in a new speaker who has got good potential in some exclusive domain. And today we have got Dr. Rashmi Kulkarni, who will talk about very important topic uh, about our food, health, nutrition, and how they are interrelated. And I'll request my colleague Kalpana ji to introduce the speaker of the day, Rashmi Kulkarni.
Thank you so much,
Kalpana ji.
sir. Thank you so much, sir. And as Dr. Vashne has said that today's topic is very apt in today's scenario because in today's scenario we all want to have a healthy body and healthy mind, and of course both inside and outside our bodies harbor a huge range of microbiome. So all these topics will be covered, I hope so, in today's lecture. And it's my privilege to just introduce a brief introduction to our today's speaker, Dr. Rashmi Pradyumna Kulkarni. And she has a PhD in molecular genetics from the Ohio State University and a master's degree in microbiology from the Institute of Science, Mumbai. Her postdoctoral research focused on evolutionary genetics at the Institute of Molecular and Cell Biology, Singapore. This was followed by research targeted at elucidating the mechanisms of breast cancer and lung cancer at Weill Cornell Medicine at Qatar. Dr. Rashmi is an entrepreneur in hydroponics as well, managing partner at Integrated Group in Qatar as well. She is also an educator, conducting outreach programs for students, parents, and teachers to familiarize everyone with the gut microbiome and how it relates to nutrition and long term health. Dr. Rashmi is a volunteer for the Global Indian Scientists and Technocrats Forum for the Ahar Kranti Nutritional Education module. So, without taking a due, I just request Dr. Rashmi to start the today's webinar. Dr. Rashmi, please.
Namaste everyone. It's my pleasure to join such a wonderful audience, and I hope I'm able to share something new that most people have not. I mean, I'm hoping to share something that's not really known yet. Let's see if I can share my screen once again. Okay, so is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, now it is. But if you could make it full screen, yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So the topic for today is how human are we? Here I will be focusing on our microbiome, nutrition, and what all this means to our long-term health. So the things that I will be talking about are microbiome and nutrition and how these two interact, what actually happens when these two meet. We are very proud of being human, and we think of ourselves as the strongest species on earth, and we think of ourselves as a combination of our visible organs, as we see on the left. But we also have trillions of microorganisms that reside on our body and inside our gut and all our organs. This is what makes us a complete human, the microorganisms as well as our visible organs. So let's look at what a microbiome means. What is a microbiome? We keep hearing that term all the time. So this is a collection of the microorganisms that live in our bodies. And these can be bacteria, viruses, protozoa, fungi. Majority of the microbiome in humans consists of bacteria. That's the type that's most commonly present. And why are these microbes important in our lives? So if we look at the right box here, there are 10 times as many microorganisms inside our bodies as there are human cells in our body. So that's a huge number. There are more than 10,000 different species, as we see on the left, that have been sequenced already or identified that are living in the human body. If we look at the left bottom corner, there's 100 to 1 genes or the genetic material, unique genetic material that belongs to the microorganisms. So they really outnumber our own genome by 100 to 1. That's again a very significant number. And this is what makes us different from each other, because genetically all humans are 99.99% identical to each other. But what makes us different from each other is our microbiome. So if we really look at our cells, we are only 10% human because we have 10 times more microorganisms than our own cells. But when we talk about our function, we are actually only 1% human because 99% of the genes belong to microorganisms. So this is how we would look like if we saw ourselves under a microscope, teeming full of trillions of microorganisms on our skin, inside our bodies, and they're really colonizing everything that we have and functioning along with us. We have co-evolved with our microbiome, so we cannot see them as separate from us. They are a very integral, significant part of our bodies. What is the source of the microbiome? Where does it all come from? So initially, when we think of a baby inside the mother's womb, it is a sterile environment. But the maternal microbiome contributes to metabolites that are very significant for the growth of the baby. And when the baby is born by a normal or vaginal birth, the baby gets colonized by the mother's microbiome. That is the first source of the baby's microbiome. That's at least known so far. Babies that are born via C-section do not get this kind of a microbiome. The second source of the microbiome is by breastfeeding practices. Again, breastfed babies versus formula-fed have very different microbiomes. So these are the very important factors that shape a baby's gut microbiome early during life. The microbiome is also shaped by other factors such as environment, the diet, and genetics. Microbiome changes with age because we are exposed to a lot of different things. These are external factors, the food that we eat, and all of these contribute to the accumulation of these microorganisms that function with our bodies. So if we look at this image here on the left, we are looking at the bar graph showing babies accumulating microorganisms in their bodies, and these function with our body. So during adulthood, the gut microbiome is very stable and it's very diverse. The diversity keeps going down in elderly populations. So this is how the graph would look like. This is just another example of the human microbiome that's very dependent on the external environment and the food, the medications that we take. So if we look at the identity of different bacteria or microorganisms in different stages of life, we will see that they keep changing over time. We also have very specific microbiomes for each body part that have been identified so far. And these have unique functions in each part of the body. Our microbiome is like a unique fingerprint that we have. Each person has his or her own individual microbiome that depends on the experience or the history that he or she had in life. So what does the microbiome do? These are some of the functions listed that the microbiome actually performs in our body. So some of these are for training the immune system, metabolism, helping our nervous system development, and several other functions including drug metabolism and tissue development. If we look at what the microbiome does with our immune system, our gut is our largest immune organ. About 70 to 80% of the immune cells are located in our gut. Here we are looking at an image showing the development of the intestinal cells. On the left side is a representation of the intestine in a baby, which is it is sterile. It does not come in contact with microorganisms. And once it does post-birth, these microorganisms are involved actively in training our immune system to show them to show the immune system what is self and what is foreign. So this is a very important stage in life where the immune system is trained. It is extremely important to have a good exposure to microorganisms at this stage. Here's a cartoon representation of what the microbiome does. At the bottom, this representation shows the microorganisms actively training our immune system. And the green microbes shown here on top are saying that I think we'll struggle to set up a colony here because the immune system is being trained very efficiently. Just a fun fact for some fun facts for a break in between. These are some of the surfaces that are the dirtiest in our homes, and these are the ones that are that most people do not think about cleaning. Some of these include cell phones, toothbrushes, remotes, kitchen sinks. There are 200 times more fecal bacteria on an average cutting board that cuts meat than there are on a toilet seat. So that's quite shocking. The dirtiest thing in the house is the kitchen sponge. These are not the things that we normally clean. What we do instead is we use surface disinfectants, antibiotics, antibacterial hand washes, body washes, everything antimicrobial, including toothpaste and floor cleaners. And what all of these do is it gets rid of all the microorganisms that could be good sources of our microbiome. So if we look at this image here, there's a hygiene hypothesis. This is something called a hygiene hypothesis, that when we live in a very hygienic environment, we do not have exposure to all of these wonderful microorganisms that would ideally train our immune system, that would form a barrier in the intestine, and that would keep us very healthy. So these missing microorganisms can cause a dysbiosis or a leaky gut, which might lead to inflammation, which might lead to food allergies or intolerances, immune dysregulation, and they could be the cause of several autoimmune diseases. So just some food for thought. How do we get a healthy microbiome? If we look at these two very contrasting images here, and we think about what children these days are doing, we should be able to figure out what the problem is. Do we get a healthier microbiome by being outdoors or by being inside working on our gadgets? Is our lifestyle microbiome friendly? If we look at the gut that has the largest colonization of microorganisms, there are 1.5 to 2 kilograms of these microorganisms in the human adult gut. And what these do, as I mentioned before, is play a very important role in immunity, as shown on the left. They actually make a physical barrier to all of these pathogenic microorganisms, and they also actively train our immune system. These microbes play a very important role in synthesizing a majority of the B vitamins and vitamin K, which we cannot make. And they also help in the absorption of calcium and iron. They play a significant role in metabolism of the food that we eat, which would be undigested otherwise. If we do not have a healthy microbiome, it can lead to inflammation. The unhealthy gut microbes cause gut inflammation, leaky gut, and this can be a cause of majority of chronic diseases. In individuals that have chronic diseases, the bacteria in the gut are significantly different from individuals without the disease. And these can be reversed. It is possible to reverse these chronic diseases with the recovery of the gut microbiome. So this is a simple equation. If there's a bad gut microbiome, it leads to increased inflammation and an overall poor quality of life. There's an increasing demand to recognize the gut microbiome as a distinct organ of our body. This microbiome that weighs 1.5 to 2 kilograms performs some of the most important functions in our body, which we cannot perform on our own. This is an important technique that is being studied for most chronic conditions. It's called a fecal microbiota transfer, in which fecal material from healthy individuals is transferred. It's tested for pathogens and transferred to individuals who have chronic disorders. And in many cases, for many of the diseases, there are very good results showing that these can be reversed to some extent just by transferring microorganisms from a healthy individual to a diseased individual, as shown in the panel below. If we look at the obesity epidemic, that's a global problem. Gut microbiome profiling in obese individuals as compared to normal individuals shows very different signatures of the microbiome, not just in adults, but also in children. If we look at any of the chronic diseases, some of which are shown here, like lupus, multiple sclerosis, Sjogren's syndrome, Crohn's disease, metabolic syndrome, autism, there are very specific signatures of the gut microbiome that can be correlated to each of these diseases. These are just a few that are listed here. So transferring fecal microbiome from such individuals, from normal individuals to diseased ones, as shown here, can improve the symptoms, insulin sensitivity in this case, for patients of metabolic syndrome. If we look at how the mind works or gut feelings actually might be real. Gut microbiome, the gut microbes might guide the workings of our mind. The gut microbiome is our second brain, which influences our mood and well-being. A huge part of our nervous system, peripheral nervous system, also is in the gut. And a big part of our emotions like disgust, fear, joy, anger, sadness, and many of such feelings are influenced by the nerves in our gut. These gut microbes directly communicate with our nervous system. Psychobiome sounds like a scary term. What this is a signature of different microbes or bacteria that are seen in people suffering from the disorders that are listed. Some of the disorders are listed on the right. So in these disturbed bacteria, gut bacteria, are actually sending signals. They are making metabolites that are directly affecting our mood and cognitive function. There are specific signatures of these microorganisms for each of these conditions. And what is interesting is this that scientists have actually taken the gut microbiome from people suffering from each of these disorders, and they have transferred these to germ-free mice that have never seen microorganisms before, that are never exposed to microorganisms. And when they do that, these mice start showing symptoms of the exact same disease, schizophrenia, as shown here as an example. When the microbiome from people who do not suffer from this disease is transferred, the mice are completely normal. There are also specific signatures of the skin microbiome in several forms of skin cancer. There's even a breast cancer microbiome where the microorganisms are significantly different from adjacent normal skin or normal tissue. If we look at chemotherapy or cancer immunotherapy, some people respond extremely well to chemotherapy and some do not. The gut microbiome is significantly responsible for how people respond to any of these drugs or chemotherapy. So what is being done now is fecal microbiome transfer is done from a responder or a responding patient to a non-responder. This helps the non-responder become a responder and start responding to chemotherapy. So if we look at again the importance of microbes in immunity and health, if we have a diverse traditional diet that contains all of the nutrients that our body needs and the fiber that we need, it leads to a healthy microbial diversity as we see on the left. And this healthy diversity has a very high level of interaction with our immune system and a very good training is provided. This leads to improved health. If we look at the industrialized diet that a lot of people are following, which is very low in fiber, very low in nutrition, and high in empty calories, this leads to low microbial diversity, low levels of interaction with the immune system, and very poor health. So if we look at the circular diagram on the right, optimum nutrition leads to healthy microbes in the gut. This leads to good immunity and good overall health. This is a virtuous cycle. People who are in good health tend to choose better nutrition. If we look at whether we can correlate what we already know with current science, this is an interesting review that was published that collated all of the work that is done in Ayurveda. And what this has shown is that what we eat affects all of our organ systems, including the nervous system, the gastrointestinal, hematological, immune system, cardiovascular, and endocrine system. What this does, it supports immunity, it supports digestion, and removes all of the undigested material, prevents accumulation of toxins. The microbiome supports our mind, our body type, bodily tissues, and it influences the metabolic waste in our bodies. If we look at what is known traditionally about the circadian rhythm and nutrition, in Ayurveda, it states that the morning is a kapha pradhan kal, where the metabolism is not very active. This is the time where we should eat light. The afternoon, or if we look at this image here, that's the time where it's a pitta pradhan kal. That is when the digestive fire or the metabolism is very active. This is when we can have our heaviest meal. The evening is the time which is called vata pradhan kal, and this is where the metabolism is again going down. So food should be consumed. That's when the last meal should be consumed, before dusk. So food should be consumed with respect to the time of the day. If we look at this in terms of the gut microbiome, the image in the center shows that there is cycling of the gut microbiome according to the time of the day. There are many very different species of bacteria that are enriched during the day versus at night. And this is dependent on our circadian rhythm. The microorganisms also have their own circadian rhythm which interacts with our body. If we look at what happens to the food that we eat, this is an example of the circadian rhythm over 4 days. The gray line here shows the activity of the brain going up and down during daytime and dusk. The rods and circles shown here are the microorganisms that change in composition during the daytime versus nighttime. And they are completely in sync with the metabolic activity shown in the red dotted line. So when all of these are in sync, they are together, acting together, this leads to good health. But what happens now is we tend to eat well past dusk, and the microorganisms that keep cycling in our body, that keep changing in composition, do not do so at the appropriate time. The circadian rhythm of the microorganisms and our own bodies is mismatched. And when this keeps happening over time, this leads to a collection of harmful metabolites, weakened immunity because the microorganisms themselves are not healthy. The food is not digested because it's not in sync with the metabolism and with the gut microbiome. And this leads to accumulation of toxic metabolites. And this is the beginning of all of the chronic diseases that we know of. If we look at the microbiota in different kinds of pathologies, on the left, it is shown that these are the endogenous factors that are affecting our microbiome. Some of these are the host genetic material or genotype, the immune status, and comorbidities that we might have. The exogenous factors are climate, occupation, too much of hygiene, diet, stress, and a sedentary lifestyle. With these exogenous factors, there's an increase in pathogenic bacteria. This gives rise to several forms of chronic diseases later in life. This is also the cause of disturbed microbiome function. So if we look at the left here, these are the normal functions that the microbiome does. But on the right, we can see that majority of these functions are completely disturbed if the microbiome is not healthy. And this is the cause of several chronic diseases. If we look at the tenets of Ayurveda, it states that we should consume traditional diet based on seasons, because different seasons, in different seasons, our body has very different metabolic states. And in these different metabolic states, it is ideal to eat foods that are seasonal, that are ideal for those particular metabolic states. And this correlates perfectly with changes in the gut microbiome. If we eat seasonally, the gut microbiome remains very diverse. It changes according to the seasons, and this leads to very good health. If we look at the pyramid of health based on nutrition, the stages of prevention are these. If we are able to follow the stages of prevention, we can remain in the bottom 3 stages. But if we do not follow nutritious, healthy diet, and we have a change in lifestyle and food choices, it will lead to the top of the pyramid where we reach the treatment phase. So the traditional Ayurveda aims to maintain the health of a person so that no diseases manifest. It also aims to cure diseases that are caused by poor nutrition. If we look at the food aspect of it, this is the old food pyramid. So I've intentionally shown the old food pyramid, which had carbohydrates at the bottom. This has already been changed to have fruits and vegetables at the bottom and carbohydrates on the second level. But the Indian diet has a very carbohydrate rich, unbalanced food. And if we look at what we consume, the things that we consume are on the left, and most people think that these are healthy, but these are very refined carbohydrates that lack fiber. The ones shown on the right are healthier choices for the same. So what's the problem with eating refined grains? On the left here is shown a whole grain with the bran intact. So the bran is the part that has most of the fiber in these grains. The endosperm that we eat in the refined grain has only the starchy carbohydrate with some amount of protein. The germ that is also removed in refined grains has several nutrients, vitamins, phytochemicals, and healthy fats. So when we are eating refined grains, we are actually depriving our bodies of all of these wonderful nutrition, and we are only getting the starchy part, which contributes to spike in blood sugar. If we look at how people think of fruit and vegetable consumption, again, the unhealthy versions are shown on the left, the healthy ways of eating on the right. If we look at dairy and fish, the same thing. Our ideas of what is healthy are blurred, and most people don't realize what they are consuming is not actually healthy. This is another example of meat, where people tend to consume a lot of fried, smoked meat. The same with fats and sugars. These are the unhealthy versions on the left, the healthy versions on the right. There's another issue with fruit juices. This is one example where there's a huge misconception surrounding fruit juices, that people tend to think of juices as very healthy. In fact, when any fruit is in the juice form, most of its fiber is gone. What is left is sugar. So we are actually consuming a lot more sugar than we would if we consumed a whole fruit instead. So here, this shows the amount of sugar that's present in one glass of juice, carrot juice or watermelon juice. These are just some examples. So what happens when we consume, for example, one medium orange? We tend to get about 10 to 13 grams of sugar from one orange. And because this has fiber, and this satisfies our hunger as well, this leads to slow and controlled rise in blood sugar because the fiber is present with the sugar content. If we look at orange juice, an average size 16 ounce, this gives us 48 grams of sugar. There's no fiber in it. This causes a rapid blood sugar spike and fall. The same thing happens with orange soda. It's not just unhealthy, it's artificially made. It gives much more sugar than orange juice. So what is the effect on the microbiome when we consume whole foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, or food that is low in fat? All of these food that we ingest is chewed and it interacts with the entire digestive system. The microbiome and our digestive system have a sufficient amount of time to digest all of this material. There's enough fiber to keep us healthy. But when we look at fruit juices, overcooked pureed vegetables, processed refined grains, or a high-fat diet, most of these are not interacting enough with our digestive system. They are just going through releasing significant amounts of sugar. This westernized or industrialized lifestyle, which is very low in fiber, has significantly changed the makeup of our microbiome and has reduced the diversity of our microbiome very significantly. If we look at an urban versus rural lifestyle, the urban lifestyle is full of artificial chemicals, processed food, and the lifestyle is pretty much in a very sterile environment. It's exactly opposite of that as seen in a rural environment. These are some of the common things that are seen in urban environments. The food is highly processed, industrialized. It is very low in complexity, very low in fiber, high fat, high carbohydrate or empty calorie diet. It has very high amounts of animal protein. The water is treated. There's a huge amount of antimicrobial products that being used, and because of availability, 24/7 availability of all kinds of food, the schedule is not dependent on the body clock anymore. The lifestyle is sedentary. There is constant use of antimicrobial products. When we look at a rural lifestyle, it is the exact opposite. There are no processed foods. It's a completely natural diet. The plant material is unprocessed. The diet is very high in fiber and low in fat. It includes very less animal protein, no antibacterial soaps or any other antibacterial products. The lifestyle follows our circadian rhythm or the natural body clock. There's intense physical activity that is included in the lifestyle, and the products that are used are all natural. So if we compare these and look at incidence of chronic diseases, we can see a very high incidence in the urban population. A special mention to sugars here. Sugars, when we think about sugars, these do not have fiber, and these just increase our blood sugar very rapidly. When we think of sugars, we do not think of all of these foods that are low in complexity and full of carbohydrates, as shown here at the bottom, that are rapidly digested into sugars. So these are also hidden sugars that we are consuming every day. This is an example of how sugar can sneak in our lives. When we say we are drinking coffee, it can actually mean coffee with huge amounts of sugar, 73 grams, for example, in this, as shown in this image. Majority of the cereals that we eat, that we give our children, also have significant amounts of sugar. Some of them even contain up to 5 teaspoons or 31 grams of sugar. I just had to give a special mention to Nutella because it is advertised as an example of tasty yet balanced breakfast. And the first ingredient in this is sugar. There are hidden sugars in a lot of things that we consume, a majority of processed foods, and we are not aware of this. Most people are not used to reading labels, and the whole idea is, oh, I don't eat so much sugar because I'm not aware of it. So these are some of the drinks that have up to 44 grams of sugar in one serving. These are some of the names of or hidden names of sugar. These are the very, very different types of chemicals that are used that contribute to sugar in our bodies. Sugar is very addictive. It has been shown by researchers to be even more addictive than cocaine. The more sugar people eat, the more they feel like eating. If we look at what artificial sweeteners do, is they actually can harm our gut bacteria. They can mess up the gut bacteria and make them make us react as if we are eating sugar. And they pass through the digestive system and can trigger temporary rise in insulin levels. They can change the composition of our gut bacteria, and this leads to very unhealthy metabolism. If we look at processed foods, there are several problems with consuming processed foods. They are so far from their natural state. They are empty calories. They do not have fiber. They do not have any nutrition. And they are also addictive because of the sugar and salt composition that's added to it. So what are the consequences of eating processed food? We are actually filling ourselves with low, non-nutritive food that has empty calories. It can lead to obesity without proper growth and development. It can lead to cognitive decline, anxiety, depression. It can worsen appetite and digestion. It increases the risk of several forms of chronic diseases. It leads to overall poor quality of life and poor gut health. So what happens when we eat this kind of junk food or processed food? On the image on the left, it is shown, the intestinal cells are shown here with an impenetrable barrier, because the cells are producing mucus, and on top of this mucus is the gut microbiome, which is forming a significant barrier. But due to processed foods, there are alterations in these microbiota. They are now unhealthy. The intestinal cells do stop producing the amount of mucus that they did before. So this barrier now becomes penetrable. And this change happens in just 3 days. So from 3 to 7 days to 5 to 8 weeks, we can see that the microbiome is completely changed if people continue eating this very unhealthy diet. And this compromises the immune system. This leads to a significant number of chronic diseases. Our microbiome is very diet specific. These are some of the examples of diets: high fiber diet, high protein, high fat, or a carbohydrate diet. The microbiome in the gut depends on what we eat, and they in turn help us digest the food that we eat. So it is very important to have a balanced diet in order to have a healthy or nurture a healthy microbiome. The diversity of our diet is extremely important for the diversity of the gut microbiome. If we have a diverse gut microbiome, they produce metabolites that are extremely beneficial for our health. And this leads to a good health status or a healthy body. Preserving the diversity of the microbiome is as important as preserving species on Earth. Westernization and industrialization of food and the environment that we live in has reduced the diversity of the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome diversity is really a significant problem, the loss of diversity. And this is something that we should focus on because we have co-evolved with our microbiome. It is an integral part of our body. That is something we cannot ignore. So if we have an unhealthy microbiome, if the nutrition is poor, the interaction will also be poor. This leads to a significant number of chronic diseases. Now, let's look at who controls what we eat. We have seen that it's very important to have a good microbiome. It is very important to eat healthy, but who really controls what we eat? No one really dines alone. It is a collection of the microorganisms in our gut that also crave the food that we eat, the unhealthy things. Because if we eat unhealthy for a significant amount of time, this collection of microorganisms is also unhealthy, and they are the ones that crave all of these this unhealthy food. That's why whenever we think of changing our diet or eating something very different, it has to be done gradually. The change in diet has to be done gradually in order to be successful. There are several external influences, especially on children who are constantly on some gadget or watching TV. There are commercials that influence the food choices that children make. In the United States, there's a lot more spent on advertising junk food. For example, in 2017, $13.4 billion were spent on advertising junk food as compared to $1.2 billion on public health. When we look at foods that are in their natural state, like fruits and vegetables, they do not need any advertising. This is an example of how advertising works. And now we have the choice of eating whatever we want 24/7. Everything is open or even delivered at home. It's so convenient to eat unhealthy food. There's also an issue of distracted eating. Most people are not even looking at their plates, and we tend to either look at the cell phones or some gadget or some TV shows when we are eating. We have no idea what we are eating, how much we are eating. If we look at what children watch on YouTube, there are a lot of commercials that are made, that are included in these YouTube videos. And children as young as 3 years old are watching all of these YouTube videos with commercials in between. And these commercials, majority of these commercials show unhealthy branded food, such as fast food. If we look at any grocery stores, all of the things that children should choose are at an eye level that's convenient for children. There's nothing happy about a happy meal. If we think about food labels, are they tricking us? Are we actually reading the food labels for the foods that we are eating? It is very important to start reading and getting familiar with what's written on food labels. It will give us information about all of the chemicals that we are consuming and all of the sugar substitutes that are included in these foods. So it's a good idea to start this habit of reading food labels. What can we do about eating healthy? These are some of the techniques that can be used. Mindful eating, eating a more diverse traditional diet that has very high amount of fiber and all of the macro and micronutrients that our body needs. Listening to our body clock, getting used to reading food labels and making healthy choices. Teaching children by example, because children do what their parents do. We should make small incremental changes so that we can continue with that kind of a change. We also need exposure to diverse outdoor environments, because it is the outdoor environments, for example, soil, which contributes to a significant number of microorganisms in our microbiome. Physical activity and exercise are also equally important. This is an example of a nutritionally balanced diet that teachers normally teach students, that there are macronutrients and micronutrients that we need to keep our body healthy. These include carbohydrates, including fiber, healthy fats, proteins, vitamins, and minerals. We also need to teach them about spices that are the highlight of traditional Indian cuisine. And these spices provide several additional health benefits to keep the body and mind healthy. And all of these combined prepare our body to defend it against several diseases. If our body gets all of the nutrition that it needs in a timely manner on a daily basis, it will be able to keep run like a well-oiled machine. This is something that we have always heard, that we should eat the rainbow. Unfortunately, this is how the rainbow looks like now for children. Let's bring back the rainbow. Why is it important? Because all of these colored fruits and vegetables contain very different vitamins and minerals, all of which are required for normal functioning of our body. Several of these vitamins are water soluble and they need to be replenished regularly. If we look at the effect on health, if our body gets all of these vitamins and minerals that are required for proper functioning, we can use food as medicine and reduce the risk of cancer, heart disease, inflammation, and several other chronic diseases. We can improve overall health, including eye health, lung, liver, all of our organs. We can reduce, we can have a lower blood pressure, improve memory, prevent aging. So all of these factors are very, very important. If our body gets all of the nutrients that it requires, we will be able to reduce all of our risk of chronic diseases. So diet is the single most important thing that is in our control to avoid all of these diseases. Another thing that is also important is it is high time that we start designing our outdoor spaces that are microbiome friendly. Children play in very sterile environments, in play areas that are artificially made, but the microbial life is very different outside than in such sterile places. So as a society, we really need to start thinking about more microbiome friendly outdoor spaces as well. These are just some examples of children playing indoors with gadgets in very sterile environments in places that lack sources of good microbes, shown on the left. And on the right are children playing outside in nature and exposed to a wide variety of microorganisms that can lead to a very healthy immune system and a very healthy overall life. So after all of these, I'm just showing an example of some of the advances in medicine. If we manage to have a highly nutritious diet on a regular basis where we get everything, there's a lot of science that is also focusing on prebiotics, probiotics, synbiotics, postbiotics, and things like that. There are several advances in medicine that use information from the microbiome to treat all of the chronic diseases that are already present. So with this, I will stop and I can take any questions about the microbiome or nutrition or its interaction. If we look at what our responsibility in this is, I just wanted to mention very briefly about an initiative called Ahar Kranti that we have started as a member of the Global Indian Scientists and Technocrats Forum. Because nutrition is so important, we have launched an initiative called Ahar Kranti or Ahar Revolution in India on the 13th of April. This is a nationwide awareness program where we are making people aware of what nutrition can do to prevent chronic diseases, what nutrition can do to improve our lifestyle, longevity, our productivity. And if we manage to do that, we can make India a very healthy, very productive nation. If you want to know more, we have a program called Ahar Kranti Guru Vandana, where we will be honoring the incredible teachers in India while dedicating informational modules about nutrition on the occasion of Guru Purnima on 24th July. So I'll share the link if anybody is interested.
Indeed, magnificent. How this 50
बहुत ही
minutes have
शानदार,
passed, we could
बहुत ही
not
शानदार।
realize. Um,
Thank you. I hope I managed to convey everything clearly because it was a very long presentation. I normally make it in separate parts that
no,
are
we
30
never,
minutes long. So,
we could not realize that 50 minutes have passed. It was very well, smoothly going.
okay.
Uh, very entertaining in the sense of you have large number of questions to deal with.
Yes.
Uh, Priyanka ji.
Yes,
Thank you,
I
sir. Thank
just, sorry, I just wanted to mention initially that I'm not a doctor and I do not give recommendations about diet because it wouldn't be right for me to, as a researcher, to give those kind of recommendations. But any other questions, I would definitely love to take.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I completely agree with Gagan sir and other senior members, and I think all the participants that your lecture has been very, very engaging. I think almost it's been some 50 minutes, and we just thought of hearing it, like,
Thank
keep
you.
on hearing, because it was so informative and so pertinent related to the present context. I could see many comments in the chat box where our eminent participants are coming out with their own observation and how this topic has become very, very relevant, specifically in context of COVID. Because at this point of time, I think all of us have realized how important it is to have this whole idea of balanced diet and how we actually go back to our roots. So, ma'am, with your permission, we have many questions in the chat
Yes,
box, and
yes, yes,
I would like to read them one by one so that you can please respond to the
yes, sure.
queries. So, ma'am, I had tried to collate a few questions also because many of the participants asked many questions.
Okay,
So I thought of putting them together. Maybe it may be easier for you to respond.
yes,
Ma'am, when we started with the lecture, there was one question from Shirjeel Ahmed Siddiqui ji.
yes.
He has asked in the chat box, what role one's microflora plays in disseminating AMR?
Sorry, what is AMRs?
Sharjil, are you here?
Shirjeel ji, are you
AMR is
there?
antimicrobial resistance.
yes, okay. Yeah, so the antimicrobial resistance is something that I think he means immunity by that because the microbiome that we encounter as babies. So where we are
Actually,
exposed. Sorry, what was the question?
if I could tell you a little bit about AMR,
Yes,
what is happening these days, a lot of people are taking antibiotics.
yes,
So people are developing immunity, or rather, virus is creating its own immunity against those antibiotics. So next time when a person takes same antibiotic, it does not give any treatment effect, and such thing is called antimicrobial resistance.
so that's antibiotic resistance actually. That's not antimicrobial resistance because we are resistant, the microorganisms are resistant to the antibiotic. That's called antibiotic resistance. So what is happening is that when people take antibiotics, the bacteria in the gut or any bacteria in fact have a mechanism to develop resistance against it and they become genetically resistant. So if we keep taking the same antibiotics, they are already resistant. They have they evolve to have those genes which prevent any effect by these antibiotics. And unfortunately, this antibiotic resistance can be transferred from one bacterial species to another. It is very easy for this to be transferred. So if we continue taking antibiotics, the microbes in our gut, the bacteria in our gut can easily gain this kind of antibiotic resistance. So even if the pathogenic bacteria is gone, the gut microbiome can still have the antibiotic resistance that the pathogenic bacteria had. And this is a very, very serious issue that there is indiscriminate prescription of antibiotics and we are increasing the number of bacterial species that are becoming resistant to these antibiotics. And these bacteria are now colonizing people's gut. So we are actually limiting the number of antibiotics that we can use that are actually required in any kind of a serious situation. So if we have a healthy gut microbiome, this microbiome is constantly training our immune system, and it forms a physical barrier as well. So what happens is we are not so what happens is the microbes are actively preventing any kind of infection. The pathogenic bacteria do not have a chance to invade, or they do not have a chance to replace. They are very small in numbers normally. This is one thing that the gut microbiome is doing. The other thing that it's doing is it is actively training the immune system. So as when babies are exposed to healthy microbes, the immune system is still developing. The immune system is learning at that point which microbes are healthy and which are not. So if that is the time when pathogenic bacteria are seen by the body, the immune system thinks that these are harmless because it's still undergoing training. So it is very important to have a very healthy exposure at that time. And if children get infections very early on and they are given antibiotics, as is the case now, that many young children are already taking so many different antibiotics, they will have this antibacterial resistance in their microbiome very early on. That is again a very significant problem. There are many different problems associated with taking antibiotics.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I think Gagan Gupta sir also wants to ask something. Already, sir had posted many questions. Sir, would you like to please ask your questions?
Yes, I can sum all those up and then see, Shmiji, there are many questions. Whether this microbial, you use
Yes.
the word technology, uh, leading from right from nanotechnology to the FMT, etc. Can we really tailor? Can we do some tailor-made surgeries against maybe tumor, maybe cancer, malignant cells, and other kind of problems which you talked about, the chronic diseases?
So if we look at nanotechnology, there is a lot of research going on about what the microbes are actually doing, because they are using what we eat and they are producing metabolites or chemicals that directly affect our health. So if we look at developing baby inside the mother's microbiome is making chemicals that is actually crossing the placenta and affecting the growth of the baby. So if the microbiome is healthy, these metabolites, without the microorganisms themselves, these chemicals are crossing the barrier and they are affecting the growth of the baby. But we do not know what these metabolites are. And this is the case for all of the functions in our body, the training of the immune system, the digestion of food that we eat, the synthesis of vitamins that are required by our body. At least the vitamins part is known. But all of these other metabolites that are made by the microorganisms that have so many beneficial or harmful effects on our body are not known. When we look at all of these chronic diseases, and when I say that there are very specific signatures of bacteria, gut bacteria in each of these diseases, we are at this stage where we only know about the signatures. We do not know about what chemicals they are producing that are actually causing this harm. So that is something that is being, there's a lot of work being done on, and once these metabolites are identified, definitely there's a lot of scope for nanotechnology and use of these metabolites that are very healthy to treat majority of the chronic diseases. So we are at this stage where we know that the gut bacteria is doing something extremely important, but we do not know the mechanism yet. That is where we are right now. So what is being done for majority of the chronic diseases is that researchers are transferring fecal material, because that's a very good representation of the gut microbiome. It has the majority of the microorganisms. But because we do not know specifically which of these organisms are doing something, they have been extremely difficult to isolate and identify There is no single microorganism that has been identified that, oh, this particular organism is the cause of this disease. So we are at that stage where we have a general population that is being used for the treatment of chronic diseases.
Yes. Priyanka ji, can I ask one more simple question? One more question.
Please, sir, go ahead.
If allowed.
Please, sir.
Yes, we understand, Rashmi ji, the difference between the sugar content and the glycemic index. Can these microbiomes can increase, can reduce, even though the sugar index is high, the glycemic index may be made low. It is somewhat related to my earlier question, but it's not surgical. It's now. Yes.
Yes, so even if the sugar content is high for any of the foods that we eat, it depends on how much fiber there is. The fiber content of the food is extremely important. So, for example, we are eating a whole fruit versus just plain sugar, chemical form of sugar. So, the sugar itself is directly sugar, it has zero fiber. So when we eat it, it is just causing a rapid rise in whatever. But when we are eating fruits, we are eating the entire thing with all the cells, with the fiber, with the sugar bound to the fiber. So when everything is digested, there is a process where the fiber is slowly releasing the sugars when it is being digested. So the microorganisms help us digest fiber. We cannot digest fiber ourselves, the very complex fiber. So when all of this is digested, it needs a significant amount of time to be digested. This is why the sugar is released very slowly. This is why it is so healthy to eat fruits and not fruit juices. Because fruits have a lot of sugar, but it's how it is released in our body that is most important.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you,
Many
ma'am.
questions, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot. I think Vishnu Bhatia sir also want to ask some question. Sir, would you like to ask some question? Your hand is raised.
Yeah, not question.
Ji, sir.
But I'm very thankful to her, in fact, Rashmi Kulkarni, for this talk. And this is what worries me. It's enlightening. At the same time, it's frightening. Frightening because most of the things that she says, and they're really, she's right, whatever she says. But those things are at odds with our present lifestyles. Even if we try to follow the advice given by her, it's not possible to do so with our present lifestyle and with our present circumstances. For example, I mean, she says, and rightly so, that soaps might destroy some of the microbiomes. But under the present circumstances, we are asked to wash hands not only once, but several times a day. So, I mean, although one would like to practice what she is advocating, it becomes very difficult. For example, she says, let children play in the open. Good,
Yes.
very good. But again, it's contradictory in the sense that we are afraid he might, or the child might get some problem from the soil or from the environment and so on. I mean, these are all contradictory things. But I agree, and I think she's talking like my grandmother or grandfather, and it's very healthy advice. I'm really thankful to her. It's a very healthy advice, very enlightening advice, but somehow can't be followed in entirety. Still, I think as much as we can, we should follow the advice. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Sir,
I
you
just
will-
wanted to comment on that, what you have said are excellent points. I just wanted to mention a few things, that if we look at now the pandemic, because of the pandemic, we have had to follow a lot of things that we normally don't do, like use of hand sanitizers, masks, and things like that, that we are living in an even more sterile environment. And it is going to affect the microbiome. We are going to see a lot of chronic diseases later on because of this. It is very unfortunate. But what we are doing is we are sterilizing our hands with hand sanitizer. We are not having exposure to outdoor environments. The soil is not giving any of the diseases, even in normal circumstances. We do not let our children play outside because we do not want them to bring dirt inside the house. It's not because we are scared of them falling sick. The soil is not going to make them sick. So there are some priorities that people need to change because we need to get this kind of exposure. The other thing about COVID is that instead of wearing masks, which actually prevents the virus from going in a respiratory tract, people are using hand sanitizers. I don't know how that's helping, but we do not use hand sanitizers because that's not how the virus spreads. If there's enough awareness made that you wear a mask with complete sealing, it should be sealed around the nose and the mouth. That's how you prevent the virus from being transmitted, not by sterilizing your hands or living in a sterile environment. So it is extremely important for children to play outside. If they have access to outdoor environments, it will really help their immunity for COVID. And as a society, we have made these choices of moving ahead with technology and making outdoor spaces so sterile that children do not get this kind of exposure. Even we don't have that kind of exposure. Children nowadays, they have school timings, they have to stuff themselves with whatever food they can eat, and the mothers prepare something that's easy for the children to eat. It might not be nutritious at all. And in schools, they get maybe 20 minutes or 10 minutes to have their lunch. When they come home, they are attending all kinds of extracurricular activities, and the time of whatever dinner is very late, and they go to sleep right after that. Even if we provide the best of foods, there is no way they can absorb any nutrition from that. So, I mean, mentally we might feel that, oh, we have given the best to our children, but as a society, we really need to think about what we are doing to the next generation. Are we actually giving them a lifestyle which will let them be healthy as adults? I don't think so. Right now, we need to have a lot of thought about this. We need to change as a society. That's exactly why I'm doing this outreach program with Dr. Gupta.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot for highlighting these important points and giving us food for thought for reflection about our daily lifestyle. Now I would like to move to S.K. Vashne sir. Vashne sir had also asked many questions in the chat box. Sir, would you like to ask your questions?
No, I just made one question. In fact, not many questions. But the first comment which I made was that unfortunately in Indian system, we learned about balanced food too early and then we forget it. So it is a subject of the primary class. And by the time we get secondary and out of school, we have completely forgotten. And today, more than us, our children are driving us to the fast food. So it causes real worry for the parents. But my question was a bit different. Question was that how to increase shelf life of the food, and how do we ensure that food we are eating at home, even if it is stale, is safe? And so that is main concern, because what happens that sometimes we need to store food for 3 to 5 days, maybe a week. And secondly, if you see from the commercial angle, then food need to be supplied to a long distances, which require substantial transportation time. So it needs to be safe at the end of the consumer. So how do you suggest to go?
Okay, so these are very, very important points. When we look at food preservatives and increasing shelf life of food, the preservatives are added. The reason the food preservatives are added is to stop microbial growth, so that the food remains edible for longer periods of time. And some of these foods have preservatives which will stop microbial growth for about a year, several months to 1 year. So we really need to think about it, that if these products are stopping microbial growth, what will they do when we eat them? What will they do to the gut microbiome? Are they not going to damage the gut microbiome? because they are antimicrobial. So we can increase shelf life of food, but that food will be far from its natural state. That will have products that will harm our microbiome. And this in turn will prevent proper digestion of that same food. So do we really want to consume something like that? And
is
if we
there,
want something that has, the shelf life is increased for a few days, there are many natural preservatives. For example, salt and sugar are used traditionally as preservatives. Oils are used as preservatives. There are many herbs that are used like rosemary and traditionally many other things. Even garlic is used as a preservative in some of the foods. If we go back to this traditional form of preserving food, Indian culture has a lot of techniques for preserving food. So that can be used to preserve nutrition and that will not really harm the microbiome. There are even fermented foods that are preserved, which are extremely beneficial. The bacteria that are present in fermented foods, like yogurt, for example, are very, very beneficial for our gut. So that is something that we can focus on instead of this. And the food miles, as Vaishnavi has talked about, it's extremely important because food goes all over the world and we are buying things that are grown in different countries. It is very easily available. So yes, refrigeration is one way to keep it fresh, but of course it's a very expensive way to do that. But the best thing to do is to eat local. That is the healthiest food for us. If we eat local, we are actually consuming the microorganisms that are present in the soil where we live. And these are the microorganisms that are the healthiest for us. Only they can help us digest the food that we eat in the best possible way. So eating local, eating seasonal, whatever is available in the area that we live is the most beneficial for us. This is something that we were traditionally following. We have lost out on all of that knowledge. This is something that children should be taught and encouraged, that just because something looks fancy and comes from a different country does not mean it is good for us. Locally, when we talk about the iron content of spinach, for example, that spinach is very good for iron. There are many local green vegetables that are available regionally in India that are equally or even better for iron content, but people are not aware of this. So all of this awareness needs to be increased, and children especially should be given all of this knowledge. When we teach in schools about the food pyramid, for example, yesterday I showed my 6-year-old. She saw that pyramid and she said, "This is wrong. The fruits and vegetables should be at the bottom." So I was very surprised that at 6, she learned that in kindergarten. She already knows that it is wrong. It is wrong. But does that mean that she will have good food choices as an adult? No, she is probably going to forget, as Vaishnavi said. So this is something that we need to increase the nutritional awareness with parents. And children are eating a lot of junk food. Why are they doing that? Because parents are eating junk food. Parents are introducing junk food to their children, and they think that's a reward. No, that's not a reward. That is going to cause chronic diseases much later. And all of these chronic diseases actually start in childhood. If we look at heart disease, for example, the fatty streaks in arteries are already visible in young children. It is only the disease is manifesting in adulthood. Instead of 60s and 70s, now it has started manifesting in 30s and 40s. So we can only imagine what is happening in children. It's extremely scary. And if we manage to give parents all of this information in a proper way that we are doing in Ahar Kranti, we should be able to change people's minds about what kind of food they're introducing to their children. This is not a reward. This is a punishment. So really, there are several things that we need to think about as a society, as teachers, and what we are teaching the children. So the module that we have made for teachers has all of this information, and we are really encouraging teachers when we present this on Guru Purnima to come up with different formats and not teach this as a syllabus. This should be gamified, this should be storified, there should be humor about it, there should be activities. There are so many things that can be done to keep the children interested in it. Children should be involved in selecting fresh food. They should be involved in growing food. They should be able to see the process of growing. They should be involved in cooking. If they do that, they get really interested in food. And it should be something as a very important part of their lives. This will really help us as a society to make our next generation very healthy.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we will move to the next question. Anupam ma'am had asked a lot of questions in the chat box. I would request and invite Anupam ma'am. Please, ma'am, raise your questions, ask the questions. Ma'am, your voice is not coming. Maybe you are on mute. Yeah, you are on mute, ma'am.
Hello, is it? Am
Now
I
it's
audible?
coming. Now it's coming. Yes, ma'am. You are
Good
audible.
evening, everyone. And thanks, Dr. Priyanka, for taking my question or allowing me to ask the questions. In fact, I would like to compliment Mrs. Rashmi for a wonderful and informative talk. And it is really the need of the hour. And so that is why it was a very engaging session today. And since I myself teach physiology, that is why I made it a point to attend your session today.
Thank you so much.
And it was really an enlightening session. But although we all know the list is endless, I have been writing a number of statements. But as Bhatia sir has already enlightened us, like how do we cope up with all these challenges in the modern lifestyle? That is the biggest challenge for us. How to prevent our children from being exposed. Whenever we take them to the market, all these things are visible. So
Yes.
I think the government should intervene, and there should be certain strict regulations, because when we were kids, we were never exposed to these things. We just consumed whatever was cooked at home, and that's how we are surviving. But I really like we are really endangering the lives of our children, and it's really an eye opener. So what I would say, like we have to really be very, very cautious. And I would definitely like to attend your that Ahar Kranti program also, and to apprise my students in the college also. All these things in school canteens, whatever food is being served to them, all these things are really damaging. So somebody has to keep a check, especially the commercial ads, where I think the government can intervene, and only when we have strict regulations, these things shouldn't be promoted. And I think some regulations of these, maybe FSSAI regulations are already in place in India. Some of these things, I think some government agency has to really intervene for the future of our children and for the future of our country. So the questions that I have said, for example, should we maintain a sterile environment in the home? Absolutely sterile environment. We are using all these Harpic and Lysol and all these things, all the domestic cleaners. And nowadays, all these veg and fruit washes are coming, that we have to keep all these fruits and vegetables sterile. So we are actually losing on the microbiome from the surface of all these, which, so I have seen people who are just surviving in the outside. For example, the farmers and the children on the roads, they are exposed and they are living, and their immunity gets developed when they are exposed to all the microbiomes outside, and they are just consuming anything. For example, you go to purchase vegetables, so they are going to taste it just like that without washing. So I've never done that. So I think these are the things. So maybe 70% we are keeping the sterile environment, and maybe 25% like that. So we shouldn't be too finicky about maintaining an absolutely sterile environment, which is really we are really going to pay a very heavy price for that. So that is the thing. But your lecture was really very, very informative, and I thoroughly learned a lot
Thank
from
you
you.
so
And
much. Yeah, thank you so much for the wonderful comments.
it was
And
very, very, very engaging. And
yes,
I would like to be in touch through that Ahar Kranti program. And
yes,
I would
yes,
like
yeah,
to
actually,
thank
that can be
Dr.
a
Gagan
separate
Gupta.
presentation in
Yeah,
itself.
Dr. Gagan
She,
Gupta for sharing the
no, she
links
will.
for the
I mean,
lectures.
I will do that, Anupamji, and you will
Yeah.
be listening her again very soon, probably in this month itself, on a different platform. I will be informing all of you, and probably as far as your question is concerned, she has already answered. That
Yeah,
is
yeah.
I
Right.
just wanted to
yes.
mention that when we talk about the policies that the government should make, if there is enough demand for healthy food, the policies will be made. We have to take the responsibility to train our children and teach them to make the right choices. Just because
Yeah.
unhealthy things are available, we should not be forced to buy them and introduce them to our children. If there is enough demand,
Nahi,
because all of the economy drives all of these policies.
yeah. Nahi, many
That's the
schools have
simple thing.
now,
That economy
many
is
schools
driving,
have
not the
curtailed.
health of the people. And when we
Yeah.
launched Ahar
Many.
Kranti, we had extremely positive, not just feedback from the government, but Dr. Harshvardhan himself inaugurated Ahar Kranti.
Yes,
So
yes,
they
yes.
also want the same thing, but policies are not going to change overnight. There has to be demand for healthy food, and there has to be an initiative from each of us to do something, to change something. If we do that, the policies will eventually, they will definitely change.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Priyanka, Ronak is wanting to ask something, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, sir. So, Ronak, ma'am,
Yes, thanks, Priyanka.
please ask your question, ma'am.
Yeah. First of all, thanks, Dr. Ashmi. I think, Dr. Ashmi, can you hear me?
She wants to
Yes,
see
I
you
can
as
hear
well.
you. Yes, yes, I can hear
She
you.
wants to see me as well. Okay.
So as we.
Thank you, Dr. Ashmi. Thanks for your nice, informative lecture. So, what I want to know one specific question, not question actually, your opinion about that you have taken the psychobiochrome as they produce the metabolite and the specific signature. So, I just want to understand if you talk about the chronic disorder like Alzheimer's. So, these metabolites are specifically targeting the tau protein or the A beta protein, or they are disbalancing or balancing the neurotransmitter. So, what is your opinion about it?
So I think it is all of these. Excellent question.
Okay.
So
Okay.
definitely the tau protein is affected, but we do not know yet. Even though Alzheimer's has a very specific signature of the microbiome, we do not know the mechanism.
Okay.
That is what, and that is true for all of these chronic diseases. We are at the stage where we know that the gut microbiome is extremely important, and the Alzheimer's gut microbiome has also been sequenced. So there is a specific signature, and there is also focus on nutrition as to how nutrition can influence the progression of Alzheimer's. So these two combined actually are not mature yet to know the exact mechanism of how it's happening and how exactly it can be prevented. We have not reached that stage. But what we know is that maintaining a very good microbiome can either avoid all of these diseases or at least delay the onset or make them less severe, depending on what we do about our nutrition. So we are really not at that stage yet where we know the mechanism exactly.
Okay. Okay. And is there any specific metabolite, if you are aware of, has been identified? I know it's Alzheimer's, like nothing has been,
No, no,
no
no, it has
mechanism
not
has been
been.
identified till yet. Yeah. Okay.
No, the metabolism has not been identified.
Okay. Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Dr. Ashmi, for
Yeah,
the
you're
nice
welcome.
presentation and the
Yeah,
detailed information. Thank you very
thank
much.
you.
Mm.
Before we have finished the questions.
Sir, there were few questions from Indu Ragesh ji as well.
Please. Just one sentence.
Ji, sir.
Rashmi ji,
Yes.
Neeru Yadav ji is sitting here, and she
Okay.
has made one statement which I like to read. बहुत ही शानदार, जुड़े रहने का ही मन कर रहा है और आपको सुनते रहें. Yes, please, Priyanka.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Indu Ragesh ji, are you there with us?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. Thank you,
Yeah,
Rashmi,
ma'am.
ma'am. It was
Yes.
a very informative and wonderful
Thank you.
presentation. And my question is, what is the biggest challenge to the novel microbiome-based technology?
The biggest challenge is that we have not yet been able to identify what exactly is causing these chronic diseases. What are the metabolites that are causing these? I mean, there's accumulation of toxic material, there is damage to our own cells. There are many of the things that are happening in these chronic diseases, but we have not been able to identify because there are trillions of microorganisms in our body. So we are still in the process of going through. We know that populations of microorganisms are having this effect. We have not identified any single microorganism that on its own can contribute to these. So that is one challenge, to isolate one and do that. We have not reached that stage yet. That will happen, but it has not. And we do not know what metabolites are causing these effects. Because if we know all of these, it will be very easy to target them and to prevent or reduce the onset of these chronic diseases. But yeah, we have not reached that stage yet. That is one of the challenges, to identify those metabolites that are responsible.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Gagan sir, I think now the questions are over. I would request if by chance I missed any question, because so far I could see that what I could understand, I have covered all the questions. Still, if somebody wants to ask any question is left by chance.
Rashmiji, we can probably produce a text material, complementary text material for children as well as for teachers, which should have probably a section on challenges in researches ahead. For example, in physics, we do have a list of 20 startling problems in physics and astrophysics together. Whiteley, Algin's. Similarly, we can have a list of some more interesting problems, not sequentially, just collected. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
We'll talk about how to do that.
That's a great idea.
That's it. भाटिया साहब आप probably भाटिया साहब आप हैं ना अभी? Why I am calling Bhatia Sahab? Because Bhatia Sahab had been a main instrumental in developing textbooks for class 6, 7th, 8th, and have been helping various organizations in their teacher training programs at different stages. The word microbiome is probably not dealt anywhere in the textbooks.
That is the funny part, that it's so important and nobody knows about it.
Yes, I never knew about this word. You might recall that in our first meeting itself, I asked that please make me to understand. But we will keep it in mind now that it is this session has come up at very right time, because the process of National Curriculum Framework development is going on, and then the syllabi and textbooks. So here we'll take care of it. Do it. Yes, we'll take care.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Gitanjali को बुला सकते हैं?
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. It has been a wonderful talk. Now we will move towards the formal vote of thanks. And for that, I would like to invite Ms. Gitanjali Malhotra. Please take the stage and propose the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka, ma'am. A very good evening to all.
Gitanjali, please switch on your camera too, if possible.
Okay, sir.
Yes.
A very good evening to all. On behalf of Varshney Teachers Group, I, Gitanjali Malhotra, thank our respected speaker, Ms. Rashmi Kulkarni ma'am, for enlightening us with her thought-provoking talk on microbiome, nutrition and health. I also thank Dr. S.K. Varshney sir for the welcome address, Dr. Kalpana Varshney ma'am for introducing our respected speaker and for distribution of e-certificates, Dr. Priyanka Varshney ma'am for managing the question answer session, and Dr. Gagan Gupta sir for organizing this session. I also thank all those who have participated in today's webinar. The next session of these interactive webinars will be held on 17th July 2021. We look forward to have all of you in the next webinar as well. And now I request Dr. Gagan Gupta sir to allow us to wind up the session for today.